many of you guys know that Food Forward's work in fighting hunger and food waste is wrapped around three programs. Our very first program is our backyard harvesting work. And I'll start by giving you a little update on what's happening in backyard harvest before I get to the next ones. Basically, once COVID hit, our first step was making sure that our staff was safe and stable like everybody else. We closed our offices on May 13th. That was our last full day of work, and then hunkered down in a work from home setting, except for the produce pit stop, which I'll talk about at length in this presentation. That's been running pretty much nonstop since the crisis began. Backyard harvest had a very short hold of about a week or two while we tried to figure out what we do with our incredible core of lead volunteers and the robust citrus season that was upon us. Basically, we shifted to single person harvests, or what we call solo harvests, and then DIY harvests, which were done by homeowners, and then they brought the fruit into nearby food pantries, which were in desperate need, as we all know. We have an incredible pool of lead volunteers, and so amazingly, in just the month of April, they did a total of 170 backyard harvests in LA and Ventura County, versus about 71 last year, more than doubling, almost tripling what we did last year, which was pretty crazy. So everyone rose to the call. We're still creating important partnerships. For example, we had our first harvest out at the LA Arboretum last week in San Gabriel Valley. And to me, it's a little ironic because the crisis, in a sense, has brought us back to our roots, with one person and one tree making a difference. So it's been exciting to see people rise to the occasion and move that along. Our second program, Farmers Market Recovery, which normally operates at 25 markets every week, and that's also volunteer powered, has been a lot more challenging. Those of us, and I think a lot of people on the call here, are farmers market customers. We've seen the peaks and valleys of good behavior and disorganization and logistics. And we were initially very challenged and really ended up just shutting down the program completely for several weeks, and have been slowly bringing it back one market at a time as we've been able to assess that those markets are safe to go back to. Our staff is collecting produce with new safety protocols. Our lead volunteers, once again, are coming back, but it has been slow going with the farmers market program. The big kahuna for Food Forward for several years has been our wholesale recovery program. Not even a year ago, last June, we opened the produce pit stop down in the city of Bell, and that and the program have been going gangbusters. Basically, within a week of the food system more or less breaking back in mid-March, we saw a huge spike in produce donations in the millions of pounds coming from all channels. It was our regular donors plus new donors in food service, hospitality, the restaurant supply business. It was at a point where we were turning away literally hundreds of pallets of perfectly good produce every week because we couldn't place it and we couldn't gather it. We only have 4 trucks and a certain amount of staff. And sadly, as we all saw in those pictures, a lot of produce went to waste from market. We saw so much produce coming through that in some cases we had to send it out of state because we had a shortage of agencies that were up and running and able to take it consistently. So for a very short time, we saw food from Food Forward going out to as far away as Kansas City and Houston. I remember there was a week when about 53 truckloads of tomatoes went to Houston from us. It was a new relationship, and those relationships will continue. But obviously, our priorities and the food currently is going to a much more contained footprint in Southern California. Then in early May, we saw a slight dip in donations coming in, and we had to kind of scramble a little bit. And then we saw another uptick. So it's been this very dynamic, very keep on your toes kind of process that has kept us all very, very attentive to the markets and various diverse sources where produce might come in. A little bit further in this presentation, we will give you a snapshot of how those dips and valleys have gone and where we're at overall, which has been a net gain substantially. Obviously, Food Forward is built on that, food in, food out right away. And we were challenged heavily in the first few weeks placing all this produce, as up to half of our normal partners shuttered their doors in a matter of hours. And due to the age of their staff or their volunteers or orders from the state, were not able to receive or distribute produce, which left us in a really difficult place. Totally understandable, but at the end of the day, we could not procure any produce we could not place. Those that were open also saw an incredible surge upward in the area of even sixfold in the number of families that were showing up. So instead of 150 families served at a distribution, they were suddenly seeing 900, which is outrageous. Very much in keeping with those photos you saw of lines, piling up at food banks across the country. Two partners in particular that I just want to highlight: a place called Home in South Los Angeles and See Me at the Garden are two examples of many that have pivoted and created these kind of drive-through distributions with our produce. A place called Home started emergency family days, which served 200 to 300 families per day with not just produce, but with other essentials that were needed. And See Me at the Garden went from one distribution a month to weekly distributions. But they're still running out of food, and See Me is feeding rural and farm worker communities where some of the produce, ironically and thankfully, is getting back to where it originated from. As with nearly the 2,000 agencies, direct and indirect, that our food gets to, we see it now more than ever as our duty to make sure that marginalized communities like farm workers are fed. So we're doubling down on that, putting extra resources to transportation to get food out to those hard to serve areas and making sure that those folks are taken care of. Additionally, Food Forward launched 5 new, what we call rapid response hubs in April. That was to ensure communities across LA and Ventura have access to produce. These hubs are a direct response to COVID and the increased need in the neighborhoods, and were the ones that were most affected by loss of services and income. At each location, we bring a truckload of recovered produce, about 10 pallets. It's quickly offloaded and then distributed to agency partners directly, who then in turn distribute the food to their clients. So it's very much a hub and spoke model, and we've amplified that process, and it's been going really well. Sites for that include Antelope Valley, Simi Valley, like I mentioned, San Gabriel Valley, Hollywood, Santa Monica, South LA, Watts, Inglewood, and the South Bay. Sadly, our expectations are that even after the COVID health crisis dies down, there's going to be a very long economic crisis to continue for months. And that is even without the threat of a fall surge of the virus. So we're trying to prepare for that as best we can. And these hubs are one of the ways we are doing that. We've all seen hunger statistics that have been unheard of in Food Forward's 11-year history. So rather than move at a steady state, which is what we ironically had planned for 2020, the universe really had different plans for us. There was truly, I felt, a social imperative to expand the pit stop, which is not even a year old. I didn't want to create a new program that would have been kind of crazy under these circumstances, but rather to scale what we do best, which is reliably moving vast amounts of produce that gets directly to areas of need with the least amount of barriers for folks to get it. I set aside what our strategic plan had called for in 2020, which was literally a breather year. In the 10, 11 years of Food Forward's history, we have escalated our production, our fundraising, our programs, our staff every single year. And 2020 was supposed to be a year of flattening that and taking a breath. Well, as we saw, there were other plans in store that were beyond us. I pivoted quickly, came up with an idea. I got buy-in from my senior staff and from the board of directors, and then quickly got approval from our landlord to move one wall and take the unoccupied space in the back of our warehouse. And then Emily and I began fundraising like fiends to raise the money for the initial startup costs of this expanded pit stop, and then for a 9-month runway to take us through January of 2021 of expanded service down there, so we can reach more people, we can collect more produce, and in a sense are doubling our footprint. I'm thrilled to say that in a matter of weeks, we've been able to raise the funds we need for this specific project and this specific expansion, and are doubling our footprint as we speak. We have electricians finishing the electric work in that warehouse you see on the slide, and are starting to push produce out the backside of the pit stop, having more of it come in the front side. And so we've now got more storage space. We've got another loading dock. We've got some of the temporary staff that we're hiring. And we're just getting more produce out to the 8 SoCal counties that we are reaching out to on a consistent basis. This is a temporary expansion, it's important to say. This is only a 9-month project, and that's the funding that we've raised for this. But pending need, supply, and funding for it, it could possibly be extended beyond the initial 9 months. About the same time this was all going down, we saw the launch of the USDA Farmers to Family Box Program. Grants from the USDA have been awarded to 3 of our wholesale vendors in the area to create 15 to 20 pound, almost CSA farm type boxes of mixed fruits and vegetables. We are given those boxes, approximately 8,000 of those a week. And we hand those off to the agencies who are feeding the families in need. Here's a clip of day 1 of some of the approximately 72 pallets a day that are arriving at the pit stop. And in many cases, those pallets don't even make it into the pit stop. They stay on the loading dock before they're sent off on destinations to San Diego or Santa Barbara. On this day, again, we had an all hands on deck approach. We had 6 trucks at the time. This is about sunrise that morning. These boxes are coming in between 4:30 in the morning and 6 a.m. So you can see it's super, super busy there. And this is even before the expansion. Here's a peek inside the pit stop yesterday morning. So you can get an idea of what it looks like cheek to jowl with these USDA boxes, as well as our normal recovery, which is going strong as well. Our kind of loose pallets of zucchinis and bell peppers and mangoes and what have you. Those of you who have not been at the pit stop, I look forward to giving you guys a tour in person, but this is about from a 12-foot elevation looking down at the space, and you get an idea of just how packed it is. Beside that is one of our team members, Betsy, holding one of the first produce boxes from the USDA. And if you all take a look, you can see melons and apples and carrots and pretty much in its amazing high quality produce. And we've been really pleased with how this is running. It's one of those things that I know there's been a little controversy in the news about the USDA Box Program. We do feel pretty strongly that it's been a positive for the most part. We are a little frustrated that no financing has come to any of the food banks or organizations like Food Forward around this. Unfortunately, we're still having to raise the funds to do the distribution, while these for-profit food distribution companies that are boxing this are getting really hefty contracts. So we are trying to reach out to the channels we know to have deeper conversations as this program hopefully continues. Here's also a video clip from one of our partners, the Dream Center in Echo Park, showing a distribution from just last Friday. We know for certain the program is going to continue until June 30th and likely until the end of the year if current proposals in the pipeline are approved. We just sent some letters into folks to support it for its next 2-month tranche. So what's been pretty amazing is that we have seen during this process, and this slide kind of shows you a little bit, is a solid uptick to the point where, due to wholesale produce partners and the inflow of the box program, we've seen produce coming out of Food Forward now double our total average of now it's about 1.2 million pounds every week, which is about double what we were doing this time just before the crisis. So it's been an extraordinary lift to, in a matter of weeks, double our output, but the produce is there, the need is there, if not even greater, and we really do feel it's our responsibility to do that. People are asking us a lot, like, what's next, what lies ahead, and I wish I could tell you that I really knew. As you all know, things are changing on a daily basis, and for us, we often feel like it's changing on an hourly basis. The USDA Box Program came together in a matter of 10 days from application until actually getting the awards and getting the produce flowing, which for the US government is a ridiculously efficient and unusual way to get a program rolling. So we're just staying on our toes, and we are staying as best we can to pivot as opportunities come up and as the need shifts. We are hearing from the field about different quantities of produce that might be available in the months ahead. We're hearing everything from farmers planting 50% of their fields due to restaurant and hotels being closed to fully planting. We're preparing for something in between, which means, again, a lot more uncertainty, but hopefully a regular flow of produce, even if there are dips here and there. And we're ready to pivot again as the scenario presents itself. I'd have to say that we're really proud of the pounds and the doubling. They're great. But more importantly, what we're proudest of is the nimbleness, the kind of signature innovation and the collaboration and responsiveness that Food Forward's been able to demonstrate in the last 9 weeks. It's honestly felt like the first decade of the organization was a dress rehearsal for what's going on right now. And I'd say we're all a bit fatigued from eating, drinking, and breathing adrenaline for the first 8 weeks of the crisis. But things oddly are starting to normalize, albeit in a very surreal way. And we're feeling actually very optimistic about what we can do to mitigate this. We're really pushing out more produce than any organization, including local food banks, by double and triple. And we see no reason why we can't keep doing that. The last thing I'd like to say is, though we have funded the entire expansion project as its own project, we are still raising funds for our basic $3 million operation costs. And so where we want to make it clear on this the Zoom call, this is not a fundraising call per se. We're not obviously going to turn away funding, but we do want to let people and our donors know that we are definitely needing to raise funds for the rest of the year for our staff salaries, for the normal costs that Food Forward was looking at for 2020. At this point, I'm going to pass it back to Emily for a bit before we get on to your questions. So Emily, you ready to take it away?
I'm ready to take it away.
Sounds great.
So as you can see from this next slide, we are about to hit an enormous milestone. We are about to recover our 100 millionth pound of produce, which is super exciting. We originally had planned on doing an in-person event at the pit stop with all of you and all of our supporters. And of course, unfortunately, that can't happen now. So we are going to instead have a handful of really fun virtual events that will be starting in around mid-June. Simultaneously, we will also be launching our summer fundraising campaign. Our focus for this is something that we've been thinking a lot about at Food Forward, which is both community and sustainability. And to that end, we are, this is a drive to get more monthly donors, because as I'm sure all of you know, monthly donors are really important to organizations because they can depend on that revenue coming in month after month. And of course, as some of you are familiar with, we will be making a 100 million pound commemorative bandana. So that will be coming out as well. And there's a fun little twist this time that I will keep under wraps. But please check your inboxes. All of this will be happening starting again in mid-June. So with that, I will segue to the Q&A portion. So again, feel free to send me questions. I see we already have a few, which is great, via the chat function. So the first question is from Erica. Where are the USDA boxes coming from?
It is produce that's locally sourced, probably coming out of California fields and maybe some Arizona. The U.S. season, as they call it, as differentiated from the Mexican season of produce growing, which we heavily are dependent on during the winter, began the first or second week of May. And so Interfresh and 4Earth Organics, the two main companies supplying the produce boxes, are based here in SoCal, and to our knowledge, they're sourcing it from California and Arizona produce.
Great. Sarah asked, who are the funders for this expansion program?
Our largest funder is an anonymous donor who came in with a very large 6-figure gift, which is pretty amazing. It's a new funder to Food Forward, and we were thrilled that they found us like as Kismet at just the right time. Additionally, we've had support come in from Cedars-Sinai Community Foundation, the Draper Richards Kaplan Foundation. Emily, you may have to help me out here with a few of the different donors.
The Broad Foundation.
Broad Foundation, which is a new funder to Food Forward.
And Refed.
And Refed, which is a food waste organization, and one or two other anonymous donors. It's been a small group, and we did not go out wide for funding for this because we needed large gifts to make it happen and make it happen quickly. And I would say in my entire career, I have never seen such generosity and responsiveness, where even the grant applications were streamlined to such a degree that Emily and I could not really believe how trusting these funders were. And I have to say, what's been beautiful is most of the funders to the expansion are new funders to our organization, and we hope it is the beginning of proving out the great cost benefit to Food Forward's work, and that over time, they're long-time relationships that we're starting to build at a really critical moment.
Great. The next question, is there any update on how we're moving forward with volunteer events?
Yes, volunteer events are the lifeblood of what we do as far as building community, and many of you have been part of those from the get-go, and we all miss them. We have been doing the solo events, and I'm happy to say that I've taken some time for fruit therapy and gotten out to trees in my neighborhood, and experienced pick leaders have been retrained on safety and health protocols through online videos, and we are doing more of those regularly. There are available properties to harvest, and with citrus season in high swing right now, we're moving into Valencia oranges. And I believe that we are trying to find a way to bring in volunteers to be trained that are not veteran volunteers. We have to be super careful though, because we're dealing with homeowners who have long relationships with us. We have volunteers that are new to our processes, and we have, without being overbearing, a lot of kind of processes to verify that the fruit is safe, that the homeowner's property is respected, that the volunteer has a good time and stays safe. So we're actually moving a little slower with bringing those out. If you keep up with Fresh Juice, our newsletter, you'll know exactly when those volunteer opportunities are going to expand. And as far as farmers markets, right now we're trying to get all our Glean Team leads back out to the markets that we're out. So if you're interested or you've been a Glean Team leader in any way, those opportunities exist as well. And if you email volunteer@foodforward.org with a specific question about volunteering, they can get back to you pretty quickly.
Next question. What's next for Food Forward? Will you expand to other locations?
It's amazing to get that, and humbling and flattering to get that question. But it is one that is a little bit daunting. Right now, we are, again, we had to psychologically and physically and spiritually rejigger ourselves out of what was supposed to be, again, a calm year, and then just deal with the reality of what we're doing. And so right now, we're looking 2 or 3 steps ahead. Any kind of out-of-state expansion, not really happening anytime soon. We have a 3-year strategic plan that was kicked in January, and that's all going to have to be pushed a year now to accommodate the emergency, but also where we're pushing ourselves. It's going to have to be really retooled in a way to accommodate the new muscles we've grown in this very short time. That said, I can tell you that we're looking at partnerships out of state with organizations like Brighter Bites in Houston, which does fresh produce supplying to schools, and they're looking to expand into LA, and we're in active conversations with them. We're continuing long-term relationships with places like Rotary First Harvest up in Seattle, and kind of making sure that loads of produce that might be between our areas are getting rescued and trucked to them or to us or someplace so they don't go to waste. But as far as like another office or another state, not happening anytime soon.
Erica asked, are we working with the LAUSD Grab and Go food program?
We are not working with the LAUSD Grab and Go program, but there's about 5 to 7 smaller school districts which we're working with very closely. We have found that, again, I'm a proud graduate of LAUSD, but working with them from a food distribution is a whole other beast. And in a crisis like this, it's not a great time to start that kind of relationship. So what we did is we picked up a handful of very, very high functioning school districts like Compton or Glendale, and we have started getting produce to them in very much a similar way, where they're either added to the distribution of the meals they're getting to the kids, or they're doing drive-throughs. And those have proven to be a really efficient and scalable way for us to work with schools.
Great.
I think we have a chance for maybe 2 more questions.
2 more questions it is. With all that we've been reading about food waste at the farm level and the news, are we considering collecting produce straight from farms?
So collecting produce from farms is a really specialized set of skills. A lot of people on this call knew me in my last life when I was doing photography of farm workers, and have great respect for the skills they bring and the incredible hard work that it takes to do what they do, and also coordinating crews of farm workers. So instead of that, we're working, through the USDA program with growers and distributors directly. But there is also a nonprofit that has popped up in the last couple of months in the crisis called FarmLink. They're actually Stanford students who are collecting financial donations and arranging for the harvesting of fields with farmers that would otherwise not have customers and that would be plowing under their produce. I'm happy to report that I think this week or next week, we're going to be piloting our first relationship with them and with Brighter Bites, the organization I mentioned in Houston, about having one of those fields in Salinas, which I believe is romaine lettuce and broccoli, harvested, and then we split the produce with Brighter Bites, but we don't pay anything for it. Basically, FarmLink is raising the money and doing all the coordination. We're just making the commitment to push the produce out to its end user. So we'll see how that goes. It is heartbreaking for me as even just an avid gardener to know all the produce that's being plowed under or that has been plowed under. We understand there is less of that happening now, and we do hope that the USDA program proves successful. If you folks do want to do something, in an advocacy way, do reach out to your representatives. Maybe mention that Food Forward is working to get millions of pounds of produce a month out through that program and is dependent now on it working well. They're just finishing up the first, we're 2 weeks into it. The first trial area will end June 30th, and we're waiting in the next few days to get hopefully approval for what will be the next 2 months and then the next 2 months. We've been asked if we can take more produce from that program. We're trying to get our sea legs right now, but there is a chance that we may amplify the produce box program as time goes on and as the pit stop expansion, comes online in a 100% way. One more question, Emily?
One more question. Are we planning to launch any more food distribution hubs?
We're considering them. The issue with starting new, so we have seven of them online right now, and they take a considerable amount of work because you're basically having to vet all 7 partners and coordinate all of them into one big dance that happens the same time, same place every week. It's much easier for us to take one that's working and go from once a month or twice a month to every week. And that's been our strategy during the crisis instead of adding a new hub. There is a chance we will add them once the pit stop expansion stabilizes and we have a little more breathing room. We have to make sure, though, that they would fill a geographic space in one of the 8 counties we're in that we can get to easily and that would not be redundant. So there's definitely a chance that'll get expanded. Most likely the first thing, though, is us taking the pre-existing hubs and adding extra dates to them. I want to thank everybody. I know you guys have a lot going on and everyone's lives is uncertain. There are kids to watch and there's jobs to have and there's sourdough bread to make, but you all mean so much to us. We appreciate you taking the time. I hope this has been an enjoyable half hour for everybody. I know for me, Emily, and Pam Guerra, who's been, working behind the scenes technically and pulling these beautiful slides together for us. Thank you, Pam. That this has been a new way of communicating with folks, and we will probably be doing more of it even beyond the crisis. We just find there's an efficiency to it. Although we love site visits and we'll continue to do those once we can do them, there's nothing like kind of an immediacy of reaching out to you all and seeing familiar faces and hearing you be able to ask questions and at least be part of a conversation, even if you're 10, 20, 100, 1,000 miles away. So thank you for the support. I hope you'll stay tuned for the details of the mid-year campaign. We appreciate all you've done for us getting us to this point, and just stay safe. And we thank you again.
Thanks. Bye.